Hi, friends. Happy Monday. Hope you're having a great day. Today, I'm excited to show you an online exclusive bundle called Year of Flowers. And this one is just the sweetest little bundle and great for all year long, for all those birthdays. And it gives you a flower for every single month. So carnations for January and iris for February, daffodil for March, a daisy for April. And I want to say this one is, hmm, I know what it is, but it's not coming to me. Um, crud. Anyway, rose for June, and I believe this July one looks like it may be a delphinium, and then it looks like hollyhock for August, and this one is, I know what it is. I can see it, purple. Anyway, for September, looks like October has, I'm not sure. Oh, maybe this one is a zinnia. And then it looks like we've got for November, this is most likely, what are those orange flowers that come out every fall? Anyway, and then they've got a poinsettia for December. And then they've got these cute little sentiments. Hoping your day blooms with happiness, sending you a floral hug. I couldn't have picked a better friend, and happy birthday. So great sentiments for birthdays, but also all year long. And I love that. It's just got a lot of versatility. So today I'm going to make a couple of cards. This one's a super simple, but I'm using watercolor instead of a blend. So I think a blend marker would do really well, but I prefer to watercolor a little looser, a little prettier just with your backgrounds. But you can see this is just a super simple card with just a few layers underneath a little piece of watercolor paper. So really beautiful. And I love clean and simple cards. They make me really happy. But for those that like layers and lots of things, I'm using the new dies from the upcoming catalog called Gallery Bloom Dies. And so you can see they've got this really beautiful frame. So I've got this frame going on from that. And then you can see that I'm using the new Damask Designs embossing folder that coordinate with that suite. So that suite is called Beautiful Gallery. And I showed it to you a couple of weeks ago, and I'll be featuring that in one of my Facebook Lives a little bit closer to the May 6th date, because May 6th is when the beautiful items are going to be available. So that is the Damask Designs embossing folder, and then the Gallery Bloom dies. They're part of the Beautiful Gallery suite collection. So this one is a little prettier, and then you can see these dies actually come from the Year of Flowers. You can see it's got some foliage there. And I just did a watercolor wash in Lost Lagoon to do that. And then this cute little tag is from the Nested Essential Dies. And so it's just a cute little tag. So nothing special. And then I've got another cute little card that I'm not making, but just showing you some other ideas. And again, this is from the Sweet Collection, the Beautiful Gallery, this fern back here. So just some things I had laying around, and I was doing a June flower, just so pretty for my June birthdays coming up. Okay, so, and then this is just a card that I'm making with that Sweet Collection for my upcoming swap. So you can see that it's just stunning. And I loved how it just looks like a piece of art because of this designer series paper that comes with it. So this is Beautiful Gallery 6x6 DSP. So again, I'll show you more about this. We'll make another one very similar when we get closer to that time, but I love this. So pretty. Okay. Year of Flowers. So you can see it's got all these, and these are rubber stamps. So I've only done some of them, not all of them, but just the ones that I'm going to be using today. Okay, so the first thing that we'll do with this one here is I'm going to show you what I started with. So I use the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, and it comes in 5x7. And so what I did is I cut this in eighths. So I cut it in half, which is 3.5 by 5. And then I used those halves to do what I need to. So in other words, this one right here, after I did a wash of Lost Lagoon and Pool Party on it, the Pool Party has a little bit more of the green. Then I'm going to cut this in quarters. Okay. So this is 3.5. So I need 1 3/4. And then I need this to be 2.5. So then I end up with 4 pieces. So you can see I just end up with these really simple washes on this. So let me just show you how I got that. So I know that some of you have watched me do watercolor before. And so let me just show you. I make sure that I wet my cardstock first. So I'm using the Stampin' Spritzer, and then I'm going to use the water painter to spread it around. And if you need to, you can get rid of some of the water off of your surface. So it's going to bow a little bit. You can see how it does when it gets wet. So if you want to tape it down first, you're welcome to. And what I'm going to do is watercolor wash the way I did it and I showed you earlier. So I just went ahead and just inked up my water painter. And I just did it at both ends. You can see it kind of makes an ombre look because I'm starting from one end and going up, and it just gets lighter and lighter as I go up higher. So now I'm just using a little jar of water. Now I just want a little bit of pool putty. What that does is it just kind of gives a hint of what would be considered grass. And I just want to leave enough room for my flowers on this. So then I'll cut it into 4s. But I also can use this to cut out my foliage. And you can see that the foliage that I used, I just die cut it like so. And that's how I got some of these pieces that I'll use for my second card. Okay, but we're going to just put that aside for now. Okay, so once your watercolor paper wash has been dried, then what you want to do is you want to stamp it in StazOn ink, because StazOn is the only ink that you can watercolor with and it won't bleed. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now stamp my daisy, and make sure it's inked up really well. And then I'm going to stamp my daisy straight up and down. Okay, super pretty. And with the Stays On ink, you want to wash it off as soon as possible because it does tend to make a permanent stain on your rubber and your photopolymer stamps. Okay, so now I'm getting the Lost Lagoon again. And I'm just gonna ink up just a little bit. And I'm just going to paint the leaves. Okay, and then I'll set that aside. And then I'm going to use another water painter, make sure it's clean first. And then I'm just going to pop a little bit of Daffodil Delight in the middle. And you can see I've got a little bit of ink here. And then I'm just kind of creating a shadow by putting most of the dark ink down below. See what I mean when it gets really close? So it just kind of makes it look a little 3D. And then I'm going to just do a little bit of the, get most of that ink off, a little bit of the Lost Lagoon around the middle of the daisy. Okay, so you can see it's very, very similar to what I did over here. But having the wash already there, and if I want a little bit more of the wash, I can just add a little bit more to my cardstock. Okay, so that is really super easy, and you can do that for any month. So I'm using Lost Lagoon and Daffodil Delight for my little daisy. And then this is 1 3/4 by 2.5. And then I'm using 1 7/8 by 2 5/8 in the Lost Lagoon. And before I put this down, I'm going to just distress the edges. I'm using my nails, but you can use scissors if you want. Just making it look like a little piece of art. I'm curling up the corners. And then I'll pop it up with dimensionals. And then I'm going to place it on the Lost Lagoon cardstock. And then I have a 2-inch by 3 3/4 or 2 3/4 piece of basic black cardstock that I'm going to put this Lost Lagoon on. And it just frames it, makes it pop. Okay. Now we have our card. So I'm just going to use my home folder to get it flat, and I need happy birthday now. All right, so my sentiment is going to go here, and I want these 3 sides to be the same dimension. You can measure them if you want, but I'm eyeballing it. And then I'm using my black because I don't think it stays on for my sentiment. And I can do instead of happy birthday, I couldn't have picked a better friend. So that's a great sentiment. Perfect. Once I'm done with that, then I can glue my card face down or card piece down. Such a sweet little card, and really there's nothing to it. You can add embellishments if you need to, but sometimes just a really simple, beautiful card like this doesn't need anything. So isn't that sweet? Just a sweet little card, a little bit of color, and it just pops off the page because it's just so simple. Okay, so next is this card. So this card's a little bit more complicated. So again, I'm using a basic white A2 card piece, and I did the same thing. So I started with a wash, and I am inking with StazOn Jet Black, and then I'll show you just real simply how I watercolored that. And then, of course, I die cut out some of the little foliage. So those are feel the same. Let me just take everything out. So these are a bunch of leftovers that I had when I was making this card. I was mass producing these, and I had a bunch of pieces left over. So that's what this is. So this is the frame. The frame die cuts 3 pieces, and I'm using 2 of them. And then I'm using a layer of basic black. And then once I have my, and I think this is Lily of the Valley. And it's a little perennial. And so once I'm done die cutting or stamping it and coloring it, then I can die cut it and get this really pretty little piece. Okay. And I'll embellish it with the little iridescent foil gems. So the background is a piece of basic beige cardstock, and it's 4 inches by 5 1/4, and it's going to be adhered to an A2 card in basic white thick cardstock. So let's just start from the bottom. You can see how beautiful this embossing folder is. And this is the Damask Designs embossing folder. So pretty. And just as a reminder, it's going to be available on May 6th with the new catalog. And if you are interested in a catalog and you haven't had one yet, please reach out to me and I will send you one. Okay, so this is the basic black cardstock, and this is 4 1/2 by 2 3/4, and it just is the perfect size to fit this really pretty frame. So I'm going to pop this frame up using black dimensionals. It's very seldom that I use these black dimensionals. I've had them for a while, but I forget to use them or I don't use black that often. So, okay, so just making sure this is the same, going the same direction as the other one. So there's the frame. And then this piece, again, it's that beautiful damask print or embossing. And then it goes on the inside of this frame. Okay, so now I want to stamp my Lily of the Valley. And these are going to be popping up pretty soon. They're so pretty and they just make a beautiful, there's somebody down the way on the trail that I walk in the morning and they have these just, it's like a wash of flowers and it's so beautiful. So this is using Stays On ink because it's meant for watercoloring. And now I'm going to use my, put these away so they're Lost Lagoon. Here we go. So I'm going to use my smaller paintbrush. You can see these are two different sizes. And because I've already done the wash and it's already dried, now I can stamp it. Sorry, paint it with this Lost Lagoon. So the thing about watercoloring is you kind of want to let things blend so there's not a hard line. So these little buds are probably just a little bit on the green side, and then I'm just making a tiny bit of a shadow using a little bit of ink on one side of these little bells. It just ends up with a hint of color. So it gives it kind of a 3D look. And hopefully that's clear enough. So just a hint of color, just like this one. So it just is a really pretty, gentle little thing. And you can color with blends if that's what you prefer to do, but I love doing watercolor. It just has such a soft, beautiful. Okay, so next I'm going to die cut it out using the pretty little die that comes in the bundle. And it just perfectly fits on one of these little pieces of watercolor paper. So let me just die cut it out. Isn't that pretty? Just so simple, so easy, really beautiful. Okay, and then I need a sentiment. And I already have one that says sending you a floral hug. So maybe we'll make this one happy. Or I couldn't have picked a better friend. What do you think? Do you have an opinion? So this is where you can choose to use one of these dies for the sentiment or something smaller. So I'm going to choose to use something a little bit smaller. And I'm going to use one of the dies from this nested essential dies. And instead of the flag, I'm going to use this little rectangle, as I believe it will fit just perfectly for this sentiment. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to start by popping this one up with dimensionals. And I'm going to put it in the upper area of my frame, like so. And then I'm going to place these two leaves like so. And then I'm going to use a dimensional to hold them down, and it will also pop up this sentiment. Okay. And then the last thing is adding some embellishments. Watercoloring doesn't have to be hard, and so I'm hoping that I've inspired you to just try a little bit, because I think it's a lot easier than people make it out to be. Just takes a little bit of practice, but it's so lovely. Really easy. And then you've got those pretty little embellishments. So which one's your favorite? Do you like the flag, or do you like the little rectangle? Really pretty. Okay, that's all I have for you today. So I hope that you're having a great Monday. And if you're watching this later on YouTube, please like and subscribe, share with a friend. And if you enjoy this project, please shop from me. I've given you a link to my store where you can get this beautiful online exclusive bundle. And also I'll give you in my YouTube, I'll give you a link to my blog. So I hope to hear from you. Be sure to just put some comments in if there's anything that you have questions on, and I'll have this on my blog in the next week or so. Thanks so much and have a great evening.